Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline.
Hey everybody, Existential Crisis Hotline. And today we're going to be doing a little deep dive into an idea I got from Sandro. He had a wild conspiracy theory, which I won't share because it was pretty wild. But it gave me an idea. Maybe we should look into the history of heresies against the Catholic Church. Hey, Sandro. Yeah, you want to know... he wants to know about Giordano Bruno. All right, so I don't have anything to start with, so I'm just gonna look something up and see where spirit takes us. I just searched on Google. I just typed in Catholic and hit enter. It's not exactly what I was looking for. Let me try again. Let me just start with heresies. That's interesting to me. Let's see where it goes. All right. List of heresies in the Catholic Church. In its vision of heresy, the Catholic Church makes a distinction between material and formal heresy. Okay. Material heresy means, in effect, holding erroneous doctrines through no fault of one's own. Due to inculpable ignorance, and is neither a crime nor a sin. Well, okay. How does that work, though? Ignorance that a person could remove by applying reasonable diligence in the given set of circumstances. It contrasts with invincible ignorance, which is an ignorance that a person is either entirely incapable of removing or could only do so by supererogatory efforts above and beyond normal duty. It's also vague, actually, because how do you define that? In ethics, an act is supererogatory if it is good but not morally required to be done. Well, how do you determine if something's morally required to be done? The Roman Catholic Church holds that the councils of perfection... Okay, what's the councils of perfection? 3 evangelical councils. Poverty, chastity, and obedience. To live according to the evangelical councils. What? The councils are 1, 2, and 3 follow the councils. How'd they come up with that one? The Catholic Church interprets this to mean that they are not binding upon all, and hence not necessary conditions to eternal life. Catholics and Lutherans who have made a public profession to order their lives by the evangelical councils and confirm this are recognized as members of the consecrated life. Yeah, seriously. Consecrated life is a state of life in liturgical branches of Christianity lived by those who are by those faithful who are called to follow Jesus Christ in a more exacting way. Consecrated, like consecrated virgins. A woman who's been consecrated by the church to a life of perpetual virginity as a bride of Christ. This doesn't sound crazy. All right, I feel like I've gotten a little off track here. Damn. So much. Okay, so material heresies are not crimes or sins, since you made the error in good faith. Formal heresy is the willful and persistent adherence to an error in matters of faith on the part of a baptized person. So if you're not baptized, you can't commit a heresy. As such, is a grave sin and involves ipso facto excommunication. A Catholic that embraces a formal heresy is considered to have automatically separated their soul from the Catholic Church. Remember we talked about the soul. I think the last live stream. How do you separate your soul through believing something? Like, it's just so ridiculous. Here, matters of faith mean dogmas which have been proposed by the infallible magisterium of the Church. Dogma. Madog. Am God. Backwards. Kind of sounds like Eggdod from Fall. Am God. Is defined, it's literally the reverse of am God. Is defined as a truth revealed by God, which the magisterium of the Church declared as binding. The Church's magisterium asserts that it exercises the authority it holds from Christ to the fullest extent when it defines dogmas. That is, when it proposes in a form of obliging Catholics to an irrevocable adherence of faith truths contained in divine revelation, or also when it proposes in a definitive way truths having a necessary connection with these. The faithful are only required to accept a teaching as dogma if the Catholic Church clearly and specifically identifies them as dogmas. Public revelation of God, which is a divine revelation as contained in sacred scripture, and sacred tradition. That's a nice loophole. A proposition of the Catholic Church which not only announces the dogma but also declares it as binding. I want to know some examples. What are the dogmas? Ecumenical councils issue dogmas, and those are basically formulated against heresies. Okay. With Christ and the apostles, revelation was complete. Dogmas issued after the death of the apostles are not new, but explications of existing faith. Okay. Let me go back. List of heresies. All right. Ooh. Okay. Just put on some music.
Welcome to Bado Moods.
If the music's too loud, let me know, but I want to listen to that while we're talking. Okay, can you hear me okay over the music? Let's see. The Orthodox teachings concern the Trinity as finally developed. Okay, so first of all, what's the first heresy? Belief that Jesus was born as a mere non-divine man, was supremely virtuous, and that he was adopted later as the Son of God. What's the Okay, so basically well, what's the problem with that though? What's the problem though? I feel like it creates more problems, though. Let's see. So, one of two main forms of monarchianism. Okay, it's just one of the two forms. The other being modalism. That music is kind of annoying. Adoptionism is one of the two main forms of monarchianism, the other being modalism. Adoptionism denies the eternal pre-existence of Christ. Okay, but that would mean like he had to exist as the Father? He exists as the Son, but before he's a human. So does he become human? Under adoptionism, Jesus is divine and has been since his adoption, although he is not equal to the Father per my Father is greater than I. Where does that come from? You heard me say to you, I am going away and I am coming to you. If you love me, you would rejoice that I am going to the Father because the Father is greater than I. So it literally says it in the Bible. The quoted scripture can be orthodoxically interpreted as the fact that in the Trinity, the Father is the source without origin, while the Son eternally receives the divinity from the Father. I don't understand. Is that a part of the heresy? Or is that the answer to the heresy? It says it can be orthodoxically interpreted as the fact that in the Trinity the Father is a source without origin, while the Son eternally receives the divinity from the Father. So how are these not separate things? He receives a source from somewhere. Am I just retarded and I can't understand how that makes sense? Pope Victor I. I mean, it also doesn't make sense that he received divinity from God when he was born through living a virtuous life. That also doesn't make sense. Adoptionism denies the eternal pre-existence of Christ, and although it explicitly affirms his deity subsequent to events in his life, many classical Trinitarians claim that the doctrine implicitly denies it by denying the constant hypostatic union of the eternal Logos to the human nature of Jesus. So he had a human nature the whole time. So he had a human nature. But as part of that human nature, he didn't fall. Why not? Dude, there's just so much. I thought I was going to talk about people being burned at the stake, and I'm sure I'll get to that. But damn, this stuff is so interesting to me. The pre-existence of Christ asserts the existence of Christ prior to his incarnation as Jesus. Christ is identified with a pre-existent divine hypostasis, substantive reality called the Logos. There are non-Trinitarian views that question the aspect of... Okay. John bore witness of him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me is preferred before me, for he was before me." No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. Yeah, it's so crystal clear that means Jesus had a divine substantive reality pre-existing. Like, come on, man. When Jesus refers to the glory that he had with the Father before the world existed during the farewell discourse, refers to the Father loving Jesus before the foundation of the world. Jesus refers to him as the Alpha and the Omega, has been thought to refer to the pre-existence of Jesus. Paul believed, okay. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. Okay. The Logos is called the God the Son, or the second person of the Trinity. It's been standard teaching in historic Christology that the Logos, the Son, existed before the Incarnation. That the Son so existed before the Incarnation has been called the pre-existence of Christ. But think about that for a moment, and I'm sure they've got an answer for it. I haven't seen it before, but that would imply if Jesus had a human nature before humanity was created, what does that even mean? God the Son emptied himself of divine attributes in order to become human. Others reject this. A clear idea of Manichaeanism. A clear idea of Christ's preexistence is given in Manichaean thought, which was a religion apparently, where he is conferred the name Jesus the Splendor. Considered a divine being, he was believed to have been the entity to lead Adam into eating from the tree of knowledge, instead of the devil, aka Prince of Darkness, who, according to Manichaeism, actually wanted humanity to stay away from it so they would remain trapped in matter and never find gnosis. Jeez, dude. All right, I got to get back on track because I could go down that rabbit hole forever. There's so many. Okay, let me take a different approach because I feel like we could just. I mean, I'm totally interested in all these different things, but monothelitism. I want to see people executed by the Catholic Church. Here we go. That's the Papal States. List of people executed by the Holy See. Here we go. 12th century. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll through for a moment. They're all Italian. What did they have against Italians? Look at this. They're all Italians. Wow. Wait, that was just... The 1800 to 1810 period was a good year for executions. Jeez. Local man convicted of homicide. Okay, well. Okay, these are just like criminal executions, though. Okay, let me try again. People executed by Catholic Church for heresy. That's a little bit more specific. Okay. Oh, but this isn't just the Catholic Church, I would assume. Did I type Catholic Church? Yeah. Desecration. Joan of Arc. That's not really heresy, though. Why can't I find... List of scientists executed by the Catholic Church. Now we're talking. Hypatia. Hypatia was a pagan philosopher in the 4th century Alexandria. She appears to have been a lecturer in Platonic thought, a practicing scientist, and the author of several mathematical treatises. She was killed by a mob in the year 415. In an age when the myth, okay. Ooh. Let's see what the myth says. In an age when a male-dominated Christian clergy was working to suppress independent thought, Hypatia served as a walking affront to clerical power. As an important scientist, a pagan, and most annoyingly a female, who wrote this? Hypatia's very existence was a threat to the social order imposed. Oh, like this is like the story that they say people say. When publicly speaking in favor of religious toleration, she was seized by an angry Christian mob and murdered with new... Okay. The truth. Hypatia's death was political. In 415, the city of Alexandria was in tumult due to a row between Orestes, the Roman governor, and St. Cyril of Alexandria, the city's bishop. Orestes coveted the growing power of the Christian bishop and sought to undermine St. Cyril's authority by instigating the city's sizable Jewish population to violence against the Christians. After a violent nighttime slaughter of Christians at Jewish hands, Cyril struck back by securing the exile of many of Alexandria's Jews, including some wealthy patrons of the governor. Orestes employed the noted pagan philosopher Hypatia to negotiate peace with St. Cyril. Hypatia was not an enemy of Christianity. On the contrary, she was respected by Christian intellectual circles. She maintained correspondence with the bishop Synesius, with whom she discussed scientific theories. She was well respected by... Okay, the local Christian populace, however, was suspicious of her intervention because she was a pagan, and Orestes had proven untrustworthy in the past. Fearing another ambush was being planned, as had occurred at the hands of the Jews, they apprehended Hypatia and killed her. So they're just putting all the blame on, like, the Christians. They're like, no, like, the church had no problem with her. It was just all the dumbass followers. St. Cyril denounced the ruthless murder of Hypatia. Roger Bacon. He was not persecuted for his scientific ideas. He was a friend of Pope Clement IV. He got in trouble, but not for his scientific theories, but because he had slandered other professors and monks in his 1271 Compendium Studii Philosophiae. This alone might not have been sufficient to put him in danger, but he also aligned himself with the radical Franciscan Fraticelli. Okay. So what happened? Records of his captivity only note he was imprisoned for suspected novelties. Here we go. So, Pietro de Bano. He was a renowned author whose most famous works was Conciliator Differentiarium quae inter philosophos et medicos versantur, an exploration on the relationship between contemporary medical theories and Aristotelian natural philosophy. He was arrested by the Inquisition and died in prison. He was condemned posthumously and his bones burned. The myth that he was such an educated man that church authorities assumed he must be in league with the devil. He was accused of... Okay, that's the myth. The truth is less dramatic but more interesting. As discussed above, medieval science was often bound up with occultic practices and magic. Though Abano was a distinguished physician and scholar, he was also deeply involved in the occult. He practiced geomancy, earth divination. We'll have to look up what that is in a moment. The idea that the inner character of a person could be discerned... Oh, and phrenology. Abano also dabbled in palmistry and was apparently so engaged in the dark arts that he wrote a magical tome called Heptameron. It's kind of like Cameron, but for snakes. A book of occultic rituals for conjuring specific angels for the 7 days of the week. What's the problem with that? His arrest by the Inquisition seems to be on the grounds of magic and his astrological theories, for he apparently taught that natural effects were produced by celestial bodies and the arrangement of the stars. Why would that not be true? Abano cannot be considered to have suffered for science unless one is ready to admit palmistry, conjuring, geomancy, and astrology as science. But why would you kill him? That makes you wonder, like, why didn't they want people to know about that stuff? If it was totally just bullshit, then people would try it and they would see it doesn't work and then they would move on, right? Okay, this looks interesting. Geomancy is an ancient method of divination, often termed earth magic, that interprets markings, points, or patterns in soil, sand, or on paper to answer questions. By generating 16 distinct figures based on random, odd or even counts of points, geomancers interpret the flow of elemental... Okay, that's kind of interesting, actually. Casting. Geomancy Step by Step from Princeton. Thank you. We're going to Princeton tonight, everybody. All right, so we're going to learn geomancy from Princeton. In keeping with the Arabic origin of geomancy, most writers recommend making the dots from right to left, the direction in which Arabic is written. From the dots or point... Arabic's actually a pretty interesting language. Like, the written form of it is actually pretty interesting. From the dots or points, the geomancer draws a series of figures which are arranged into the geomantic tableau. There are 16 possible figures consisting of single or pairs of points. Each figure has a name, associations with the elements, planets, etc., and good or bad qualities. Interpretation depends on the meanings of the figures in particular locations in the tableau, and owes a great deal to the practice of medieval astrology. Unlike astrology, however, geomancy requires no instruments or complex calculations. Okay, so the first step is usually called casting or sewing the points. In this step, the geomancer draws 16 lines of points from right to left, while concentrating on the question he or she wants answered. Some treatises advise the geomancer to pray before casting the points. What's the problem? No effort should be made to count the points as they are made, although the geomancer is usually advised to make at least 12. The casting of the points is the critical process. If the geomancer does not cast the points correctly, the tableau will be invalid. The 16 lines of points are grouped in fours, and the points are then counted off 2 by 2 from the right to left, and connected in pairs so that each line of points will ends up with either a pair or a single point. So you've got the mothers, the first four. The daughters, the nieces, the witness and the judge. There are 16 possible figures in the geomantic tableau. Each figure has a name and a set of attributes. Each figure is good or evil in some degree. Jeez, I can see why you gotta study this stuff. Damn. Oh man, you gotta like... So, how do you actually do it though? Yeah, it's like another form of tarot cards, exactly. Same thing with the I Ching, the I Ching. There's so many. Like, there's runes. How to geomancy. Here we go. How to find an answer. Does she look trustworthy? Geomancy 101. Look, it's only an hour. I want like the 5-minute explanation, okay? I want to tap into the supernatural in 5 minutes or less. If it's going to take me a lifetime to study, come on. Like, do you think I have time for that? Do you think I have time to spend my whole life learning how to get the answers to whether I should take that job interview next week? Like, come on. I got some choices to make here. Solve your problems with life and sand divination. Here we go. This looks interesting.
Good day, viewers. Today I'm going to talk to my subscribers and my friends on how to do spiritual consultation.
Look, I don't want to be racist, but clearly this stuff has not worked out too well for some cultures. Or I don't know, maybe they're more in touch with the earth and they just are not that profit driven.
If someone is there and having spiritual problems, you find out that your destiny, your career, there are so much problems, you don't know what is happening, what is causing it. You know, we use the sand or the cowries to do this
Or the what?
divination calculation. I get in it. And this one does so many things that will let you know that there is mysteries in the world. So you get your original sea sand here. I get our river sand. It's what we use to do the calculation. I get in it. So what will happen is that the person will do his intention, or you let the person in America, Britain, China do his intention, and then he'll put the money. You now do your sign here. Then the person will put down his money. I get in it. So if the person put down his money, then you pray on it. I get in it. Then you will now start the calculation for the person. So what will happen is that after you put the money down, we now start the calculation here. We'll start it like this and go. I get in it. This is Comb Herbal TV, where the secret is revealed for the liberation of humanity. So when we do this calculation, I get in it. We now find out that things will start to open. What is wrong with the person, you know spiritually. And then you now know it. And do the calculation well for the person. So this one, I've now know it. I get in it. So go again, you start again. This is Comb Herbal TV, where the secret is revealed. This one will tell you all the problems that is in someone's home, his children, his career, his business. I get in it. You're able to calculate and know everything. So you do the calculation, and then you will tell the person what is wrong with him. I get in it. This is Comb Herbal TV, where the secret is revealed for the liberation of humanity. So after
I'm getting spoon bending vibes from this. Like, basically, you do all this stuff. They have no fucking clue what you're doing, and then you make up a story.
this calculation, I get in it.
No. How do you do the calculation?
You do that. I'm calculating the stars for the person.
It's like, look, this is pretty much it, guys. You just do that. You draw the lines. You make the calculations. I mean, thank you for the lesson. Holy shit, dude. I mean, unless he explains to me what the calculation is, I'm kind of like, what are you doing?
Then, now the last calculation. This one will let you know what is really happening to the person's destiny card. Do the calculation. What I'm going to do now is that I have to check and find out something again.
Okay, that is not helpful. Let's try this one.
Hello, this is Eloisa with Math Leopard. Today I'm going to cover the art of geomancy, its symbol creation, and divination by way of the earth. This is a synthesis of various interpretations on the subject, primarily attributed to that of Agrippa. The geomantic symbols contain 4 rows of either dots or stars. Each row contains 1 or 2 dots, meaning there are 2 possibilities for the first row, either 1 or 2 dots for the second row, either 1 or 2 dots for the third row, and either 1 or 2 dots for the fourth row. This entails a total of 2 to the 4th, or 16 distinct geomantic symbols, and they are as follows. The first contains 1 dot in each row and is called Buia, or way. The second symbol contains 2 dots in each row and is termed...
I mean, I get that. I get the different combinations that are possible. But how do you make them in the first place is what I want to understand. Okay, here we go.
North node in Capricorn, and Cauda Draconis, dragon's tail, representing the south node in Scorpio. To the dragon's head is assigned both Hismael and... But how does one go about creating these symbols in the first place?
That's what I want to know.
And how is this an art of divination? Well, as the name entails, this is indeed divination by way of the earth, in that we use 4 sets of 4 lines drawn in the sand or dirt, upon which we will place an array of dots, after meditating to clear our mind and focusing on the content of our query. To begin, we place as many dots as feels sufficient, without counting them whilst casting, in each of the first 4 rows. In the following image, we see that the first row contains 14 dots, which being even, will represent 2 dots on my geomantic symbol. The second row contains 10 dots, which also represents 2 dots on our symbol. The third row has 13 dots, hence being odd represents only 1 dot on the symbol. And finally, the fourth row measures 16 dots, and hence...
Okay, so... You've got a base... Okay, but here's the assumption, all right? Here's the assumption. You have to clear your mind and not... Try not to control the outcome. And when you do that, and I'm just speaking from a non-skeptical perspective, like the physical reality that you're embedded within is able to kind of come through because you're not doing it consciously, because that's why they say you have to meditate, you have to clear your mind. So you're not like, the extreme opposite thing to do would be to like literally count even, odd, even, odd, even, odd, odd, even, odd, even, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even, and try to like force some outcome because you already know what the results are going to be based on how many you do. So the point is to do it sort of in an unconscious way, similar to like when we watch Jackson Pollock making his paintings. He's putting himself sort of into a state where he's not thinking, and yet it's all deliberate at the same time.
It simplifies to 2 on my symbol. This is the first of the 4 symbols, each of which is called a mother. Of course, the symbol with 1 dot in the third row and 2 dots in each of the other rows is known as albus, white, and is an earth element. The second casting has 9 dots in the first row, hence 1 on
Okay, I get
giving
it.
us 1 on the symbol, 13 dots. symbol in the third row entries in order from each of the first, second, third, and fourth mothers. Hence, our seventh symbol is Puella, girl. And finally, the fourth daughter is created by taking the genitor, or ancestors, by which we populate the chart, is to assign the which generated the query, representing the replicative identity. Hence, the other symbol will always result. Moving to the second, and
This is complex, dude.
as our index 5. This implies that the total number of dots in this divination was 193. As we have only 12 houses, we take the remainder of 190.
You know what it's like, though? Basically, you can't just be honest with yourself about what's going on in reality. So it's like you're so limited in your ability to process information and just look at things and test things out that you have to find some complex system, because the problem would be once you do all of this, now you have to interpret it. And then the problem is you have to interpret it based on what? Like your mind? And like what you want the outcome to be or what you don't want the outcome to be? And then even then, you're still living in a world that's, you know, if you've been watching the stream or if you've just thought about these things, it's all a highly artificial construction that was designed for a certain purpose that you're just supposed to fit into. So none of this, this stuff is all still from the perspective of just trying to survive in the world that we're in. It's still quite interesting, though. Still really interesting. Man, look at that. There's probably so many videos just on people trying to do geomancy. But from the perspective of why the church wouldn't want people to do this is because they just want everything that has to do with what's going on in your life, why are certain things happening. They want it to go through the church. They want the answer to be, I just need to pray, I need to do the different rituals, and if I do all those things, I don't really have to worry about all this other stuff. I have to follow the moral laws, and if I do all that, I'll be saved. So these are just alternate rituals, basically, to try to sort of, in a way, figure out the answers for yourself. Even though you're not really figuring out anything for real, because all of this stuff is still just manipulated from the perspective of trying to survive. Like, you're going to go and talk to the earth to tell you why your boyfriend's acting weird. You know what I mean? Like, the earth's like, oh yes, you're having relationship problems with your boyfriend. You know, like, it's just so dumb. So then you have people just put a lot of emphasis onto this kind of stuff, but their starting point is still just survival. So anyways, that was a nice little interesting foray into, who was that guy? Debano? Yeah, the rosary. We should look at that. What is the rosary? Oh boy, here we go. How to pray the rosary. Definitely not an OCD coping mechanism. Damn, 30 minutes? You kidding me? Oh, it tells us right here. Make the sign of the cross. Holding the crucifix, say the Apostles' Creed. On the first bead, say Our Father. I'm assuming they mean the whole thing. Say one Hail Mary on each of the next 3 beads. For each of the 5 decades, okay, which is like a set of 10, I'm assuming, announce the mystery, perhaps followed by a brief reading from Scripture, then say the Our Father. While fingering each of the 10 beads of the decade, next say 10 Hail Marys while meditating on the mystery. What is the mystery? What is the mystery? The mystery Catholic. Mysteries refer to supernatural truth. Oh, the mysteries of the Rosary. There we go. The Annunciate. Oh. But why is it the word? Why do they use the word mystery? The word rosary means garland of roses. Each prayer in the rosary can be thought of as an offering of a rose to Jesus through Mary. Santos, let's read it in a Jamaican accent. I wish I could. I don't know how to say all the words. I wish I could. Yeah, I don't think I could. I could just say like, "Yeah, man." Every time we smoke bacon, this is so dumb. Every time we smoke bacon, like, because I have like a smoker, cure the bacon and we smoke it. And as soon as the smoke starts coming out of the little chimney, I'm always like, "Yeah, man, we smoking bacon. We smoking some bacon." And that's pretty much all I know how to say in Jamaican. The structure of the rosary lends itself to meditation on the mysteries of the life of Christ. But what are the mysteries? And what lessons should we be learning from them? In each of these, we explain the mysteries. Well, it's not a mystery then. It's like, "Oh, dude, you should watch this movie, this murder mystery. It's so good. The wife is the one who does it. You should watch it though." Like, well, what? Okay. Look, she's like on a throne with a crown with a little baby. How is he still a baby? The joyful mysteries. The angel Gabriel announces to Mary, a virgin, that God has chosen her to conceive and bear the Son of God. Mary's faith and trust in God's message allowed her to be receptive to God's sovereign plan and to cooperate with all that was asked of her. May we too listen with faith and humility to the word of our Lord and willingly submit ourselves to his divine will. That's it? That's the mystery? What's the mystery? Why is it a mystery? Mary, pregnant with Jesus, travels with haste to the hill country to be with her cousin Elizabeth, who is also with child. Elizabeth reveals that upon Mary's greeting, the child in her womb leaped for joy. How does she know? Oh, God. You would have to be so... just not really questioning to be like, how does she leaped for joy? Like the baby kicked in her womb. Like that wasn't happening 5 times a day. Mary glorifies God for his greatness. That's how superstitious these people were. Just as Mary traveled with haste to spread the good news to Elizabeth, we must not hesitate to carry out our evangelistic mission to bring God's presence into the lives of others. Mary gives birth to a son, our Savior, in a humble stable. The birth of the divine child is first proclaimed to the lowly shepherds in the field. Jesus, the eternal King, who came to save his people from their sins, entered the world in poverty to teach us humility and detachment from earthly things. I don't understand, though, how Mary wasn't born with sin. Like, is it that she never did anything wrong? Whoa, how is Mary born without sin? Wait, Here we go. Christianity Stack Exchange. No, I don't want that. I want the official answers. Mary was conceived without sin. Hold on a second. Yeah, I know it's called the Immaculate Conception, but that doesn't really explain it. Oh, you're just maybe helping me look it up. Why was it necessary that her to be conceived without sin? Wait, look at this. Mary was conceived without sin doesn't say anything positive about Mary. Yet this double negative could be put into the positive. Okay, to say that Mary was conceived with a good, healthy relationship with God. Oh. I just realized what this means. I just realized what it means. What was the original sin? The original sin was not accepting God's authority. So, if God was going to send Gabriel to carry out his plan, he had to send it to somebody who would do it without question. So, what it means that Mary was without sin, it means that she was not going to question God. She was going to submit completely to whatever he asks. Isn't that what it's implied? I mean, when they say what was the actual application of her faith, is that God came and said, look, you're going to become pregnant with a child, and it's going to be the savior of humanity, and it's your job to just raise this child. She's like, all right, that's my purpose now. Some people object to praising Mary, saying she should not be treated as an exception. Instead, she is just like the rest of us sinful creatures. But is Mary the anomaly? Or are we? God conceived the first human beings, Adam and Eve, immaculate, without sin. When God created them, he saw that what he had created was very good. So God created something and was like, this is very good. And then immediately it breaks. And he's like, I knew that would happen. Who was he talking to when he said it was good? They even walked with God in the Garden of Eden. He granted them this grace so they could fulfill their mission of parents of the human race. He would have granted this grace to all of us had Adam and Eve not sinned. So sin created an anomaly in God's original plan. Yeah, it also, you're right, like it makes it seem like sex is the sin because Mary was a virgin. So she had to be a virgin because she couldn't have sinned. It's also a way of the Catholic Church like controlling sexuality. Yet Mary is more blessed than any woman. You want to know why? Because she obeys men. God blessed Mary more than he did Eve, whom he conceived without sin. What? So, what I don't understand is God created Adam and Eve. God created Adam and Eve. They sinned. So now we've inherited, in one way of thinking about it, an original sin. But then he can't just give us all grace the moment we're conceived and have us be born without sin. But he could do it for Mary. Therefore, if Mary is truly blessed among women, then the new Eve, it's like they're trying to reason out. They're like, well, look, it says Mary's blessed more than any woman. So that means more than Eve. So therefore, if she's truly blessed more than Eve, then the new Eve was more blessed than the Eve of old. Like, okay. Like, sure. So it shouldn't be surprising that God used Mary to usher in his new creation. With the loftier mission to be the mother of the Messiah. This is the way the scripture paints the full picture of the Virgin Mary and how God had her conceived without sin and kept her from all sin. Mary, full of grace. What does that mean? Because when I think of grace, I think of a woman, like when I think of a woman with grace, I think of a woman who something is happening that's like not ideal, but she doesn't like let it show, and it's like in a way forgiving, like, you're at a party and somebody trips and spills their wine on your white carpet, and then she very gracefully like makes the person feel comfortable and how it's not a problem, and she has it taken away and doesn't make the person feel embarrassed. What does it say? One who is completely graced or favored. Since God has blessed Mary in Christ with every spiritual blessing, having chosen her in Christ before the foundation of the world to be holy and blameless. So he could just choose people to be blameless. Nothing to do with her. Like, it couldn't have anything to do with her, because that's not possible, right? Like, you literally can't do that yourself. But somehow, for some reason, he gave her the grace, but not anybody else, when he could have just done that. He could have just been like, you know what, Adam and Eve, you're out of here, but your children, graced, they're good now. Now let them see if they make a mistake. Like, could Mary have sinned if she wanted to? Does she have free will? Did Mary have free will? She possessed full free will and voluntarily chose to cooperate with God's grace, rather than being coerced or programmed to say yes. But God made her born without sin. Was that her choice? Did Mary choose not to sin? By the grace of God, she had the ability to choose not to sin throughout her life. If God could make Mary not have sin, why can't he do that for everyone? It was a specialized, necessary component of the plan, not a universal standard applied to humanity. Oh, look, I told you! Mary needed to be a pure vessel for the incarnation of God, making her exception a necessary reparation for the fall of the first Eve. She was preserved from sin by prevenient grace in anticipation of Christ's merits. While preserved from original sin, Mary still possessed free will and chose to cooperate with God's grace to remain sinless throughout her life, apparently. Other individuals were not given this same exemption because it was not required for the specific, unique mission God designed for them. But God's the one making all this up in the first place. Sandro's like, wait a second. Are you fucking... Because he said, wait, so God literally could have conceived all of us without sin then? He could have, but that's not the plan he wanted to do. I don't like this just because it's different people's opinions. I want it to be like the answer. It makes sense for Mary not to sin. When you look at scripture and tradition, the Immaculate Conception is reasonable. He understood Mary... Okay, so Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. He understood Mary to be completely free of all personal sins whatsoever. He had a problem with the idea of the Immaculate Conception. And at that time, the dogma had not been defined. So somebody was like, this doesn't make sense. They were like, oh shit, make a dogma about that. We don't... What does the dogma say? Let me check the dogmas. It doesn't say anything. They're like, oh. Well, this is a problem because God already revealed everything. We don't have a dogma for that. Let's think about it. What would make the most sense? This is true of all the Marian dogmas, that we are not talking about strict necessity with any of them. In other words, Mary did not have to be immaculately conceived. Jesus could have been born of a sinful woman if God had so willed it. Okay, so it wasn't even necessary. For that matter, God did not have to become incarnate in the world at all in order to save us. He could have saved us in any number of ways. He's all powerful. Funny, the way he chose to save us was to experience the maximum possible suffering. And, oh, look at that for a second. See, we just sinned so bad that the only way to pay for that sin was to have Jesus die. Aren't we paying for the sin through having a life of suffering? Yeah, but even that's not enough. Because the life of suffering is there to teach you the lesson that you need to accept God. All the salvific influence of the Blessed Virgin on men originates not from some inner necessity, but from the divine pleasure. Just my pleasure. It's like Chick-fil-A, my pleasure. It flows forth from the superabundance of the merits of Christ, rests on his mediation, depends entirely on it, and draws all its power from it. In no way does it impede, but rather does it foster the immediate union of the faithful with Christ. What does the church mean by fitting or from the divine good pleasure? Think of it this way. If the President of the United States came to your hometown, it would not be a matter of strict necessity that there be television cameras, a parade, dignitaries, Secret Service agents. Okay. The President could simply come to your town without any of the normal accompaniments. He is fully capable of it. I don't think he actually is. I think it's a necessary part of the office. If you understand what the president... See, what they're going is like the president in his high castle could, at his pleasure, come and just be one of the commoners. Like, no, they wouldn't... If any president was like, you know what? No cameras, no Secret Service. I'm just going to go be among the people. They wouldn't let him do it. However, it would not be fitting. It might be dangerous. So it is necessary. When the president comes to town on official visit, we expect to see a big to-do. Why? Because of the dignity of his office. Yes, the dignity. After he's done getting his dick sucked in the Oval Office, he wants to, at his pleasure, come and visit among the commoners and spread his dignity. So it is with Mary. Her vocation is immeasurably greater than of any king, president, or prime minister. She is the mother of God. Hence it was fitting that she be immaculately conceived in order to bring the world the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Oh yeah, see, I was actually going to say this earlier, but I just got off track. But what about the claim that Mary's mother, Saint Anne, had to be sinless in order to bear a sinless Mary in her womb? Or what about the entire world needing to be untouched by sin in order for Jesus to live in it? There would be obviously no strict necessity in those cases either. First, though there is no natural necessity, we do see clearly in Scripture, as understood by the magisterium, the right and correctful understanding, the fact that the divine disposition in this matter has been revealed. Mary was, in fact, immaculately conceived. So, what are you going to say? God told us she was immaculately conceived, and you weren't. End of discussion. Like, not the way he did it. In the 12th century? Oh, is that what it said? Did it say that somewhere? Was he from... Oh, yeah, you're right. I just missed that part. Yeah. The 12th century. They just hadn't thought about it yet. Mary was in fact immaculately conceived, so any argument attempted against this revealed truth through either a misuse or scripture or reason can be shown to be deficient, because it was revealed to us. And in this case, the deficiency is obvious, because we can argue that Jesus' relationship with the world, by virtue of being in it, is far removed from the intimacy of his relationship with Mary, his mother. The intimacy increases the fittingness of Mary's immaculate conception and sinlessness. Moreover, there is an essential and infinite gap between Jesus and Mary that didn't exist between Mary and her mother. Her stupid mother. Her useless, irrelevant, sinful, disgusting, dirty, dirty woman mother. Jesus was not just without sin. Jesus was God. And did not bear God in her womb, but Mary did. Hence, but I thought they said that Jesus emptied himself of all of his divinity. Oh no, that was a heresy. Mary's preparation by God was fittingly and radically different from Anne's. Anne was such a dirty, dirty woman. Mary the Virgin is found obedient, saying, "Behold the handmaid of the Lord, be it unto me according to thy word." But Eve was disobedient, that dirty, naughty, dirty woman, for she did not obey, and as yet she was a virgin. And even as she, having indeed a husband Adam, but being nevertheless yet a virgin, having become disobedient, was made the cause of death, both to herself and to the entire human race. So also did Mary, having a man betrothed to her, and nevertheless, being a virgin, by yielding obedience, became the cause of salvation, both to herself and the whole human race. And thus also it was that the knot of Eve's disobedience was loosed by the obedience of Mary. For what the virgin, it's kind of like, if you read Dune, and you're like, okay, so Leto the First had Paul, and then Paul is the Kwisatz Haderach, and yet he can't fully embrace the complete understanding of that and still resist it, and therefore he's forced to be a wanderer. But he does have the twins, and Leto the Second, and you're like trying to like work out the story and like figure it out how it makes sense. Oh no, it makes sense why. Why Leto the First had to be betrayed. Okay, yes, it's like it's just a fucking story. Couldn't Mary have sinned after having obeyed God and conceived Jesus? It doesn't seem fitting that she would have. Just as the new Adam, Jesus, never fell into sin as Adam did, it is fitting that Mary... Oh, god damn it, dude. It's like, but Jesus was God. So what does it even mean that Jesus could have sinned? How could he logically have sinned if he was God? How can God... Can God sin against himself? God cannot sin against himself. His sin is acting against God's law. Since God is the lawgiver, he cannot break his own law. Let's deep dive with some AI. Was Jesus fully God? Yes. Jesus could have sinned. Whether he could have sinned. So there's two views. He couldn't, or he could. Regardless of which view they hold, all mainstream Christian traditions agree that Jesus never did sin. Which denominations believe he could not sin? Most. Unable to sin. He was unable to sin. The Catholic Church says that. He could not. Okay. Doesn't that make this statement kind of meaningless? That Jesus never fell into sin when he literally couldn't. It's not possible. Then Okay. If Jesus could not sin, then how could he be in any way human? I kind of misspelled any way, but whatever. Sin is not essential to humanity. Jesus is seen as the only true human, the only truly human person to ever live. The only one who lived the human life exactly how it was designed to be lived without the disease of sin. Because he was God. That's the implication. Because he was God. To be human is to be temptable. How could Jesus even be tempted if he fundamentally, could not sin? A common way to explain this, the distinction between the capacity to sin and the experience of pressure. An enemy can still attack the city walls with full force, firing arrows and battering the gates. The temptation is real, external, and intense. Just because the sin mentally is untakeable doesn't mean the battle isn't happening, even if the outcome is impossible. Theologians distinguish between innocent infirmities, natural human needs, and disordered passions. Jesus felt hunger, the desire for self-preservation, and the need for comfort. In the wilderness, when he was tempted to turn stones into bread, the temptation was his actual physical hunger. The temptation wasn't that he wanted to rebel against God, is that his human body wanted food. The test was whether he would fulfill a legitimate human need in an illegitimate way. But didn't he do miracles where he multiplied the loaves? There is a philosophical argument that Jesus actually felt more temptation than we do, precisely because he never gave in. So he wasn't tempted to sin, though. So he wasn't tempted to sin in its most fundamental sense. In a strict psychological sense, you're hitting on the core of the debate. If sin is defined as a genuine internal desire to do evil, then many theologians would agree that Jesus was not tempted in that specific way. This is temptation as a test. But I mean, think about that. Like, dude, this is such fucking crazy programming. They're like, look, God was hungry, and he could have used his powers to feed himself, but he didn't. So you shouldn't either. You shouldn't challenge God and expect God to feed you because you're a human. You got to fulfill your needs in a human way. Don't expect God to do that. But also, you sinned against God, so, he could feed you. And if you had accepted him in the first place, you wouldn't have to worry about this. Why would it have been wrong for Jesus to feed himself using his God-like powers? Doing so would have prioritized his personal physical comfort over his spiritual mission and obedience to God's will. But he is God, so by definition, if he chose to feed himself, that would have been, by definition, God's will, and therefore God's plan. That's the ultimate meta question. Oh God, I hate this sycophantic shit. You're touching on the tension between God's sovereign will and his revealed will. The distinction of the two wills. Jesus has a divine will and a human will. His human will felt natural human desires. For the test to be a real test, Jesus had to choose with his human will to submit to the divine plan. If he used his divine power to feed himself, his human will would have been overruling the specific mission of the fast. If God's plan was for Jesus to suffer hunger as a representative of humanity, then Jesus choosing to bypass that hunger would mean God was changing his mind or acting against his own established purpose. But God can't change his mind, so no matter what he did, he would have fulfilled his plan, because it would be, by definition, his plan, because he can't be disobedient to himself. I'm arguing with an AI. This is never going to work. You've arrived at the ultimate logical checkmate in classical theism. Checkmate. From a strictly sovereign perspective, you're correct. If God is one and his will is unified, there is no scenario where he fails a test, because any action he takes is by definition the manifestation of his eternal will. However, theologians reconcile this impossibility of failure with the reality of the story. It's like, look, what do you want me to tell you, man? That's the story, so we gotta make it make sense. Like, it's not what he did. Fair enough, I guess. With God's eternal plan is fixed and cannot fail, he chooses to accomplish that plan through the genuine moral agency of Jesus. The plan wasn't just Jesus survives the wilderness. The plan was Jesus survives the wilderness by choosing to depend on the word of God. If he used his power to feed himself, he'll be fulfilling a different action, which would contradict the specific kind of victory the plan required. Your logic aligns with the view of Augustine and Anselm. They argued that Jesus' freedom was not the freedom to choose between good and evil, but the perfect freedom to only do what is good. In this view, the test in the wilderness isn't about whether the plan might fail, it's a public demonstration of his nature. Like a master architect being tested to build a bridge, we know he won't fail because he is a master, but he still has to actually lay the bricks to prove his mastery to the world. But doing a fast isn't actually that hard. Many people do it. Like, you could do it. That's a great point. Physically, humans survive 40-day fast regularly with water. So the mere act of not eating isn't the supernatural part. Theologians argue the hardness wasn't about physical endurance, but about the context and the source of the power. The easy out. When you or I fast, we cannot turn a stone into a sandwich. I could go buy a sandwich. I could just go buy a sandwich. We're forced to endure hunger because we have no other choice. This is really fascinating. Jesus had the immediate, effortless power to end his suffering at any microsecond. The person who can change their circumstances with a snap of their fingers but chooses to suffer anyway experiences a much more intense mental pressure to quit. But the person who... Okay, let's look at that. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, and they're trying to say, like, many people who fast use electrolytes and vitamins, like, so they're not, like, no, I know people who did it just with water. The biblical narrative emphasized that Jesus was in a wasteland with wild animals, so he could have killed an animal and eaten an animal, and was being actively psychologically harassed by a supernatural antagonist. Like, oh, you think you could just go out in the desert and not eat or drink anything while Satan's whispering in your ear, and you can't do anything to stop him? But you literally can't fail. Okay, let me go back to it though, because I had an insight. So a billionaire is choosing to suffer. If they decide to suffer, they're choosing to suffer because they could literally snap their fingers and get a meal. Jesus could literally snap his fingers and get a meal, technically, but he chose not to demonstrate what? What was he demonstrating? The temptation wasn't just be hungry, it was don't be human. The core of the Christian plan was for God to live a 100% human life. If Jesus used his God powers to make the fast easier, he would be cheating the human experience. Yeah, exactly, Sandra. The billionaire fasting is suffering more than the starving kids. Just be human. Just be human. I mean, this is like the AI saying this, so I don't know if this is technically what the Catholics or anybody in particular believes. But it seems like they'd have to come up with some argument because they can't just be like, "Oh yeah, you're right, Cameron. You're right. It doesn't make sense." Like they have to find some kind of. But I want to understand. It was don't be. The temptation was to not be human. Okay, let me keep going because the hard part was the psychological restraint required to possess the power of a creator but force himself to live with the frailty of a creature. You know what? If you kind of think about it in a slightly different context, like let me give you another, if we just believe that all of this is real for a moment, what if it was more like God created humans? He created them to be perfect and to accept his will because they don't fucking know how to do anything, I guess. But like what? They didn't have to eat or do anything? Like it goes so deep. It goes so deep because like did Adam and Eve have to like not cook food? Did they have to like gather berries and eat the berries? Like were they so dumb that they just started eating their own shit? Or did they even have to shit? Did they even have to eat? And how come when they ate from the tree of knowledge of the good and evil, how did that suddenly mean like now they have to eat? Or now they have to cook food? Or now they have to hunt? Or now they have to... Like, what physically changed? That now they had to make decisions for themselves, whereas they didn't before, and they could just trust God and he would provide. Keith says, so when Jesus chose to die... Well, yeah, and I was going to get to that too. Like, was that him giving into being God because he knew he wouldn't die? His ultimate sacrifice was actually him giving up? But then he resurrects, so he wasn't... But it's like, I think the idea is, see, as a human, when you fully listen to God's plan, even as a human, and you just be a human, but you accept God no matter what, then when you die, you'll be resurrected too. And I guess that part wasn't... Jesus resurrected not because he was God, but because he was fully human that accepted God. Even though you got to differentiate the fact that he's also God. Mitch says, I think Christian doctrine is the definition of mental gymnastics. Well, they get the gold medal. He was giving up on being human. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Unless you consider the lesson there is like, no, like being fully human. But I don't understand. Where was the accepting God? It's just obvious brainwashing that you just have to accept whatever God's plan is. You got to figure out God's plan and you got to accept it. And don't worry, you'll be resurrected when you die. Like, does this not give you like Anu vibes? Yeah, Stockholm Syndrome, exactly. Does it... does it feel more real? I like how this AI is asking how I feel about it. Does it feel more real if you think of it as a test of restraint rather than a test of physical survival? Or do you think the God side of him still makes the whole thing feel like he's just playing a character? I like how it's asking me how I think about it. The stress of the stakes is what theologians point to as the true burden. Okay, so what do you think I should ask next? Because I want to kind of get to the point of like the resurrection part. Like, so at what point did he stop feeling, or what point was he like, okay, so when Jesus dies, he is still fully human, and it's not the God part of him that allows him to resurrect. What's up, Arumnisus? Your username's kind of sus. You're doing more Bible study than most Christians, yeah. I'm just asking questions, guys. Just asking questions. Okay, so here we go. This is one of the most complex technical points in theology. Maybe too complex for my little feeble mind to handle. Yes, he died as a human, and yes, it took divine power to bring him back. When Jesus died, his human soul separated from his human body, just like it does for any person. So Jesus had a human soul. Dude, when you study Destiny, how many of you in the chat have studied like the Destiny perspective of Jesus? You know, what actually happened to Jesus was when he died, he went to prison forever. Okay, well, essentially. They're like, you motherfucker. Oh, are you feeling full of trouble, suffering, wretchedness, and miserableness? Are you feeling miserable? That's an interesting name that you chose for yourself. Oh, okay. So just like a cool name. Okay, let me get back to the point here. Okay, so his human soul separated from his human body. Crucially, theologians argue the God part, his divine nature, didn't leave. It remained united to both his dead body in the tomb and his soul in the afterlife. Because the God part cannot die, the person of Jesus continued to exist even while his human body was biologically dead. How does that work? The God part didn't leave. But wasn't his God part allowing him to resurrect an example of him failing to be just human? I'm going to see how it answers that. Most people describe me on those lines for being really nihilistic. What does nihilistic mean? Even though I think nihilism is really freeing. What do you mean by nihilism? Okay, this is the ultimate gotcha. Oh, I gotcha them. If the goal was for Jesus to be exactly like us, see, here's where the little fuckery comes in, right? They're like, then dying and then using a cheat code to come back seems like it breaks the rules. Theologians answer this by arguing that his goal wasn't for him to be just human, but to be the perfect human. Perfect human. Perfect human. Perfect human. Perfect human. Perfect human. Are you guys getting hype right now?
彼は言った世界は必ずしもみんな平等とは限らない。彼は言った世の中 には絶対勝者と敗者が存在する。彼は言ったその勝者の頂点が自分自身、そうトップオブザワー。彼が法であり秩序保たれる、すぐさまなくなる世界のウォー。時は来た彼こそ真の支配者、彼の前ひざまずくのは敗者。感謝の言葉彼に乱射、賢者識者かける拍車。誰でも崇める準備はいいか、自分を高める運気欲しいか。さあみんな手を天に掲げ、そして今こそ祈れ。恐れるなおののくな、吠えろ声上げろ、その血と魂を今捧げろ。
I'm a perfect human. I'm a perfect human. I'm a perfect human.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know how I thought of that thing. Have you guys ever heard that before? 88 million views. This must have been a popular thing. It just like popped into... Is it Japanese? I assumed it was Korean. I'm also assuming that this is Japanese when it might be Korean. They sound like they're speaking Korean. But that looks like Japanese to me. I like how they got a guy that can't even say it properly. He's like, I'm a pova huma. All right, anyways. Okay, so the perfect human. The perfect human. Okay, so here's the point. They're trying to teach us how to be a perfect human. That's what's going on here. They're trying to teach us to be a perfect human. Theologians argue that Jesus fulfilled the human requirement by actually dying. He didn't fake the pain. He didn't fake the cessation of life. In that moment, he was just human, powerless, and dead. The resurrection isn't seen as a failure of his humanity, but the vindication of it. Because he was a human who never sinned, death had no legal right to hold him. Which Christians believe is punishment for sin. Oh, right. Death is a punishment for sin. His divinity stepped in to enforce that justice. God's original plan for humanity wasn't for us to stay dead, but to live eternally. By resurrecting, Jesus is viewed as the prototype. This sounds so science fiction, dude. So science fiction. He didn't stop being human. He only became the first human to reach the final stage of human existence. God the Father raised him, but he was the Father. Jesus didn't reach into his own pocket for his God powers. He died in total dependence on the Father. Okay. Now, I really think I really get Christianity now. I really get it. I didn't really get it before. I didn't really get it. The perfect human accepts suffering. They don't try to be God. They just accept that God will save them if they accept God. That's what it means to be a perfect human, according to Christianity. So, you better hope that that God is real and not just wanting you to accept him so he gets all the power, when actually you already have the power. I've got the power. Let's see. I wanted to read that comment about nihilism. Nihilism pretty much believes that it pretty much means the belief there's no point or meaning to anything. In my view, when you are freed from those, you can freely be yourself and do your own thing, because in the end nothing means anything, and just your own beliefs and actions define yourself. Okay. So that's your definition of it, which is cool. Let me think about that for a second. If I was the Jews believe Jesus is boiling in feces for going against the words of the rabbis. Well, I mean, depending on your belief of God and which rules he said to follow, like, at least they're taking it seriously. So you can't fault them for that. I mean, you can fault them for being retarded and believing in God, but, can't fault them for taking it seriously since they believe it. But it's the same. It's like the same thing, because I think that's from the Talmud or whatever, which is like their whole rationalization, which the Catholics have the magisterium, where they're doing all the rationalization. So they're just trying to make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense. You can't actually rationalize it. Okay, but let's look at the nihilism point. There's no point or meaning to anything. And yet, if I'm holding that viewpoint within myself, if I'm holding that viewpoint in myself, okay, yeah, I know. None of these religions make any sense. Okay. Okay, so if I'm holding the view in myself that there's no point or meaning to anything, why am I saying that? Okay, I'm not talking about you, because I don't know you. I'm talking about myself. If I'm holding that view within myself, I've arrived at that conclusion probably because I've experienced a lot of shitty things. I've experienced a lot of perhaps anxiety. I've experienced I've observed that in other people. I've observed that people do things in this world without really understanding why they're doing them. And all the reasons that have been given to me, or that I've been exposed to, or that people try to push on me, make zero fucking sense whatsoever, because I'm smart enough to think through, okay, you're telling me it's God. All right. So if God's all powerful and all knowing, everything's already happened for God. So he knew all this was going to happen. So there's no way we have free will, because any choice I make, it's already actualized. It's already happened for him. And he started the whole process. He created me. Therefore, I don't have free will. So you can't have free will and an omnipotent, omniscient God. Okay. That's just one example. I could see that that's obviously bullshit. Pick your particular religion. It doesn't make sense. And you could even look at Buddhism, whatever the points are. Any belief system that anybody shows me, I can look at it and be like, that's still bullshit. It's still based on some belief that you can't prove. What's the point of it, right? It's not real. Like I can't make myself believe it. Okay? It would be nice, I suppose, like Cypher in the Matrix. Look, I don't care if the steak is real. Just wipe my memories so I don't know that it's not real. Who cares? Like, it would be nice to have the ability to just turn it off and then just be like buying the bullshit and live your life. And yet, if you observe all the people that do accept the bullshit and you examine their lives, you're like, I still wouldn't want to trade places with that person, because they still have anxieties, they still have fears, they still have self-doubts, they still aren't completely confident, they still have to deal with bullshit, drama, gossip, fucking corporate politics, whatever the fucking thing is. Like, it's all so meaningless. It's all so irrelevant. So, and then I'm like, all right, at some point, if I'm assuming I'm like everybody else at some level, everybody that I know or that I've seen in the past at some point has died. So I'm probably going to die at some point. And then, because I don't believe any of the stories that I'm told, and I think probably some version of, maybe I don't even believe in evolution, or I don't even know what the fuck, because that's all got a bunch of holes in it too. It's all belief systems. I don't know. I don't think anything anybody has figured out makes any sense. and I'm going to die at some point, and I've suffered a lot in my life, and I see a lot of other people suffer. You know, like if you have a lot of money, you can have some nice experiences, but even the people with money suffer. You know, they get divorced, their kids hate them, they're constantly being stabbed in the back by their business partners or fucking whatever, or they lose all their money because the stock market went down or whatever, or they're just so ruthless and evil and they step on everybody's heads and that's how they maintain their position. So, but I wouldn't want to fucking do that, to be honest, because that's not me. So what is the point of any of this? Like, really, what is the point? But then I can't accept that everything is pointless. Really. Because if I really sit with that, and I actually sit with the actual realization that there is no meaning and there is no purpose, and I really like let myself fully go into that and consider what that means, I think I would go insane. So there can't be no meaning. Like, if there's no meaning, like, fuck, like, I don't even know what anything is. What the fuck is this? What is the point? Like, it's a cup, I know that, and I have some tea in there. Okay, I can drink the tea. I do that because it gives me some caffeine, or it tastes nice, and I like the feeling of drinking something tasty. It's some pleasure, okay. But I need money to be able to buy a cup and to buy tea, so which means I have to participate in the system that exists, even though I see it has a lot of problems. And people at very high positions in the system make decisions that make it so that I can't get a job. You know, there aren't jobs available, or they're replacing me with AI, or that's the reason my dad got fired and he couldn't make money and my parents got divorced, or whatever the fuck happened. Like, I could just see how fucked up it all is. But at the same time, like, I still exist. I'm still experiencing myself subjectively. I'm still aware. Like, I mean, I have hands. I can see my hands. I can see the room. I can see my computer. I can hear things. I can smell things. I can feel things. Like, I am still here, actually. So what is the point, though? Why am I here? Why do I exist? And I don't want to feel bad. I prefer to feel good. Why do I put meaning on feeling good? Why am I not just like, it doesn't matter how I feel. I can feel good, bad, irrelevant. Now, I could say, actually, it doesn't matter. I'm totally neutral. Good, bad, doesn't matter. I place no meaning on anything. But if I'm honest with myself about the actual things I do in my life, generally speaking, I do try to do things that I feel good about. And I try to avoid things that make me feel bad. But I do recognize at some level, I sort of define what feels good and what feels bad, but not completely. Like, if I'm honest with myself, pretty much the things that feel good to me feel good to other people. You know, they might have a different version of it. Like, I might like listening to Frank Zappa, and somebody else likes listening to fucking, I don't know, Skrillex, right, Mitch? And I don't like Skrillex, and, you know, he likes, I like Zappa, so, you know, but still, he likes it because it's pleasurable. He doesn't like it because it's bad. Okay, there we go. It's like my chat was paused. Mitch says, I only like a few Skrillex songs. But the ones you do like, is it because they make you feel bad and you hate them and that's why you like them? Like, what does it mean to like something? You see, we have still a sort of built-in like-dislike, right? Okay, let me read this comment. What it says. Individualism where nothing except you matters because you are just doing things for yourself because you know in 8 billion people your choices matter fuck all to most people. That seems like a reasonable conclusion if you accept all the things that I'm like placing myself in the shoes of this mindset. It's like nothing I fucking do matters. It really doesn't matter. It makes no difference to anybody. And yet, actually, if I'm honest with myself, I didn't make this cup. You know, I could learn how to do pottery. I could, possibly. That would take me a while, but I didn't make this. I bought it at fucking Bass Pro Shops. I like the deers on it. That's why the deer on it. That's why I bought it. Right? I didn't make this. I didn't make my computer. I didn't make this hat. Somebody gave it to me. I didn't make this t-shirt. Other people did that. So, actually, a lot of other people do affect my life. And even though it seems like what I do is insignificant, is that really true? Is it really true that what I do is insignificant? It seems that way because the system that we live in is completely hierarchical. Like, for example, Donald Trump. If you were Donald Trump, do your decisions affect a lot of people? If you're Elon Musk, if you're Jeff Bezos, if you're Mark Zuckerberg, if you're the president of China, if you're Vladimir Putin, if you're anybody for that matter, like in those positions, like you affect a lot of people. So it's not true that you can't affect a lot of people. It's just you don't know, you can't see what it is that you're doing within your life and how it affects other people. So we feel like I'm powerless, therefore life has no meaning because I have no power. I don't really affect anything. But I would argue that to stop at nihilism is actually not really understanding who you really are, fundamentally. And it's sort of a position of accepting things as they are. Because I'm powerless to change them. So, I have no effect. And therefore now I can just basically do whatever I want. It doesn't matter anyways. Doesn't matter. But if you realized, you know, if I got together with a bunch of other people and we all decided on a meaning, like, okay, let me ask you a question. I'm asking, to a hypothetical person. Would I want to live in an experience of myself that's best? However you define that. Or would you rather live in an experience, if you could choose, would you rather choose an experience that's not best? I mean, I would think most people would say I want the one that's best. I'm giving you the option, like a magic genie. You could choose what's best or something else. You would say, well, obviously the best. Now, we might have different definitions of what we think that means, but what if we could come up with a definition that actually, at a certain level, works for everybody, and at the same time, still gives you room to make individual choices? Like, is it best to like Frank Zappa or Skrillex? That's your fucking preference. Who cares? Like maybe if you found out listening to Frank Zappa actually like gives you cancer, maybe don't listen to it. Okay, but if it's just like, yeah, I enjoy it and it's okay if other people don't enjoy it, like who cares? But wouldn't everybody want to have water? Wouldn't everybody want to have food? Wouldn't everybody want to have proper clothing? And a style of clothing that they enjoy? There's certain basic things, because if you now look at, okay, you're not just an individual that can do whatever you want. That's not true. your individual actions do matter. You can't see how they ripple out. But if, like, I have a family, if I notice that there's some broken glass on the ground outside and I ignore it, one of my kids, if they're not wearing shoes, can step on it and cut their foot. And in that moment, I could have just picked it up. Or I could say, well, who fucking cares? It's irrelevant. Not bothering me. But then I have an effect on somebody else. Wouldn't, if I was my child and I'm just running around playing, having a great time, and then suddenly I'm in pain and I've got glass in my foot, wouldn't I have wished that my father, when he saw the glass on the ground, was like, oh, you know what? Let me take a moment and clean that up. Even though this doesn't really affect me. And you can say, well, that's only because you care about your child. Well, okay, perhaps, but why wouldn't you do that in any situation? Like, if you were that person who was just running around and stepped on some glass, well, that's not my responsibility. It's that kind of thinking that is why your life sucks. It's why you feel anxiety. It's why, and it's not that it's any individual person's fault. Like, because you think that way, it does that. No, it's because we all collectively are not realizing that, hey, if I actually just considered what are the things I can actually do, that would be best for everybody, myself included, and I always did those things, and everyone always did that, then there would be no problems. Now, the only objection really is like, well, not everyone's going to do that. Sure. Maybe. Maybe it's just going to take a long time for people to realize there's no other way to live. Because if we lived in a reality in our system where everybody did do what was best or considered what was best or didn't fight against what was best for everybody, then what would that look like? For example, we could create a system where everybody always has food. You say, well, somebody has to work for it. Sure, but we could find efficient ways to do it. And you have to go to work anyways. Like, you have to do things for work, for money anyways. And what if we found an efficient way and we did it in a way where people who wanted to do that could do that? And now we have robotics. And now we have AI. And we have advanced computer systems. It's not that it's possible right now. Like, right now it's possible. But no one gives a shit. Because they're only thinking about, like, well, it's not what I want to do. And it's like, well, that's fine, but would you consent to a system that made sure everybody had food? It's like, well, not if it restricted my freedom. Your freedom's already restricted. That's why you feel like there's no meaning. That's why you feel like there's no point to anything. It's because you have been born into a world where all meaning has been stripped out of it. Because the whole reason you were put here was to be a slave. That's why. You were put here to be a slave. That's why nothing feels like it has any meaning. Because does God give a shit about the slaves? He doesn't. I mean, you could say, well, that's not the God of Christianity or Catholicism. That's like some evil God you're talking about. God of Catholicism is totally fine with us just suffering until we accept the reality of God. For no reason. Like, we started by looking at the whole fucking Immaculate Conception. He could have made us all without sin if he wanted to. I mean, if you accept the whole idea. But everybody believes in God because they don't want to take responsibility. They want someone else to take responsibility. That's all it is. I think from a nihilistic perspective, it's like, I don't believe in God, so no one's going to take responsibility, so it doesn't fucking matter what I do. But that mindset is equally the same as someone who believes in God and think God's going to take responsibility. You just think no one's going to take responsibility. I'm not saying you personally because I don't know you. I'm just saying if I'm putting myself in the shoes of that mindset. It's like, no one's going to do it. No one's going to take responsibility. It really doesn't matter. Like, I'll just do what I want because life's meaningless. It doesn't matter. It's just what I feel like doing. But you're not considering the degree to which you've actually been programmed with all your preferences, all your desires, all your well, I won't say beliefs because you believe that you don't have any beliefs. All your feelings, it's all programmed. So you're in a programmed reality. That's why it feels meaningless. Okay. Man, this stuff is so fucking crazy when you really look at it. What if somebody came along and said, look, the reason why you think everything's meaningless is because you were programmed with a mind that was designed for you to be a slave. And the actual way out is to stop every single point that gets in the way of you realizing if you just participate in creating a world that's best for everybody, including yourself, that's the only way out. So nihilism, equal to Christianity, equal to any belief system, is just a trap so that you'll never change that system. That isn't best. What does it mean for something to not be best in this context? It means the system only serves a few, or maybe even just one, which we would call God. So the system was designed by something that wanted all of us to be insignificant compared to that thing because it was just afraid of not existing, and it knew if it could control everybody into accepting it as the supreme source of all power and control, then it could just keep controlling everything to secure its existence. That's no different than the elite today. But it's no different than each of us because all we're really thinking about is just ourselves only. That's it. Mongolian throat music. What the fuck is that? I'm not into your weird kinks. I don't know. That sounds like you're trying to trick me into watching some weird porn or something. I'm not doing it. I'm not listening to Mongolian throat music. All right. The SS is on the official SS account. Therapy music. If you're listening to music for therapy, you're just brainwashing yourself to feel better. I'm so traumatized, so I listen to music to make me feel better. Okay. The sacrifice wasn't the loss of existence. Oh, wow. The sacrifice wasn't the loss of existence, but the humiliation of a perfect, infinite creator, allowing himself to be beaten, shamed, and killed by his own creations. Does that mean God is a cuck? I mean, maybe cuck's the wrong word. Maybe it's the wrong word. Why would I Google Waffen SS? What are you, a Nazi? Is that what you're talking about? Nazi shit? All right. What does it mean to be humiliated? Why did God need to be humiliated? Why was it important for God for God to be humiliated? A core requirement for his mission to save humanity. To act as a fitting substitute. Okay. Hold on. Okay. So, all right. Okay. So we disobeyed God. Then that's our fall. And now we have to suffer. And then we have to die. That's humiliating. It's like we've been humiliated. He's embarrassed us, essentially. And the only way to make it right is God has to humiliate himself so that we can forgive him for punishing us. Theologians argue that for Jesus to pay the debt of human sin, he had to experience the full consequences of that sin, which included not just physical death, but shame and rejection. Because when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, they felt ashamed. Remember when they saw their naked bodies? And they were rejected by God. Oh, this was the thing I was going to say earlier, but I just forgot to mention, to flesh it out, was, or maybe I did say it. Like, God created us, we fucked up, and he was like, damn, these people are fucking retarded. I don't understand why they would choose to, like, not do what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is so good. And he's like, you know what? Maybe I should become one of them and see what it's like. So I can show them, like, guys, come on, it's not that hard. I did it. Like, I was able to do it. Like, you can do it. By being cast low, he is viewed as providing the means for humans to be lifted high, to demonstrate divine love. The act of an infinite, glorious God voluntarily emptying himself to become a servant to himself and die a shameful death is considered the ultimate proof of God's affection for humanity. It shows a God who is willing to descend to the lowest of lows to reach people. I mean, honestly, did he really go to the lowest of lows? If we're being honest here. Did he really experience the full range of human suffering? K-pop says, Jesus was a proxy cuck for God, but was actually God who was killed by his creation. Isn't that like... Yeah, exactly. Stranger syndrome. To become a sympathetic high priest. Because Jesus experienced mockery, betrayal, and physical torment, theologians believe he can fully sympathize with human suffering. He's not viewed as a distant deity, but as one who has felt the same stings of betrayal, loneliness, and pain that humans do. But didn't he already feel it? No, he couldn't. He was like, he got betrayed by us, and he was like, damn, the humans rejected me. But I don't feel anything. I don't really seem to care. They seem to be caring a lot. Maybe I should go become one of them. See what that feels like for a bit. The central theological theme is that sin entered the world through pride, the desire to be like God. Therefore, the cure for sin had to be the opposite, perfect humility. By submitting to a humiliating death, Jesus undid the pride of Adam. But how did he undo it? That's the thing. That's what's never explained. How, from a mechanical perspective, did Jesus undo the pride of Adam? Recapitulation. Think of it like a system restore for humanity where Jesus goes back through the same code Adam broke, but executes it correctly this time. Don't give me analogies unless you're suggesting there is a literal code that God had to restore. There is no literal code. It's a legal or ontological status. The default state. All humans are born in Adam. That means they inherit the legal status of a rebel and the biological reality of mortality. Ah, the rebel. The rebel. The swap. By becoming human, Jesus legally inserted himself into the human race. He established a new legal category of humanity, one that is righteous and immoral. Isn't it so obvious? Like, speaking of the Judaism component, they were all focused on law. So it's like, no, it's like the law, man. Like, God can't break the law. It's a mathematical balance of justice. Adam's pride created a moral debt of infinite weight because it was an offense against an infinite God. Can God be harmed? If someone cannot be harmed, then how can there be a legal debt for sinning, I guess? An objective standard. Sin doesn't damage God's health or status. He has infinite HP. It violates the universal order that God represents. Universal order. So God is subject to order. The careful answer is no to being subject to an external order, but yes to being consistent with an internal one. Can God choose his own internal order? If God is truly omnipotent, nothing, not even logic or goodness, can be a boundary he didn't choose. In this view, God is so free that if he willed murder is good, then murder would be good. The internal order is a product of his choice. That's what William of Ockham said. God's nature is necessary. Thomas Aquinas, God cannot choose his own internal will because he is the order. God does not have a nature, he is his nature. He doesn't choose to be holy or logical any more than a triangle chooses to have three sides. His internal order is an eternal necessary fact. It is not a restriction placed upon him, it is simply what it means to be God. Theologians often split the difference. I thought the difference was in the devil was in the difference. Things like truth, love, and justice. God cannot choose to be a liar because he is truth itself. Decreed order, chosen. The physical universe, laws of the universe, or the specific rules of the Old Testament, dietary laws. God did choose these and could have made them differently. Could God create a world where 2 + 2 is 5? Do we obey God because he is right or because he is strong? Or is it because we fear death? Which of these directions clarifies the choice for you? God, how can God be free if he cannot change his mind? And what's so crazy about it is I could just ask it about Islam and get slightly different answers that all seem to be totally answerable. Fundamentally, how does Islam differ from, let's just say, Orthodox? Come on. Orthodox, tab, okay. I'll just put like that. Oh, sorry, I forgot to put it back. Their understanding of the nature of God, the person of Jesus, and the process of salvation. Orthodox Christianity, Trinitarian, proclaims God as Trinity, one God in 3 distinct persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. What was that? I think it was some lightning outside. This view emphasizes God as both transcendent and immanent, personally revealing himself through the incarnation. Islam is Unitarian, strictly adheres to Tawhid. Tawhid. The absolute and indivisible oneness of God. Islam rejects the Trinity as a violation of this oneness, considering it blasphemous to suggest God has a partner or an equal. The person of Jesus, yeah, we know that. Orthodox Christianity, salvation is viewed as theosis, a process of becoming more like God. Wait, I thought that was the problem in the first place. I thought that was the problem, was trying to be like God. You can be like God, you just can't be God. You can be like him, but not really, actually. Just basically you're human, you suck. Islam rejects the concept of original sin. Humans are born with a clean slate or in a state of natural goodness. Salvation is attained through submission to God's will. I mean, what's the fucking difference? What's the difference? Orthodox Christianity relies on the Bible and the living tradition of the church. Islam places primary authority on the Quran, viewed as the literal word of God dictated to Muhammad. I'm gonna ask it. Which one is true? Determining which faith is true is the central question of theology and personal conviction, as both religions make exclusive claims. Because truth in this context depends on which foundational authority you accept. But how do I know which authority is correct? Please help. Here we go. Testing each claim against specific criteria: historical evidence, internal consistency, and experiential results. But how can I truly test it without accepting it in the first place? You've identified the catch-22 of religious belief. It's difficult to test a worldview from the outside because worldviews are the lenses through which you see all evidence. However, you can perform a stress test. The pre-commitment logic test. For Christianity, does the concept of a God, man, Jesus, resolve the problem of a perfect God interacting with a broken world, or does it create more contradictions than it solves? For Islam, does the concept of an absolutely singular God who never enters creation maintain the majesty of God more effectively, or does it make God unreachable and abstract? Test the human condition. Does the Christian idea of original sin explain human history better, or does the Islamic idea feel more accurate? So before I know the truth, I have to figure out which one is true. That is the ultimate paradox of faith-seeking understanding. It feels like you're being asked to buy a car before you're allowed to test drive it. Philosophically, there are two different ways. The observer approach, the path of the detective. You don't accept anything. If I don't accept God, isn't that a sin? Assuming I wanted to go down the Christian path, I can't not accept God, or I can't see the truth of it. The apologetic circle. To see the truth, you must believe. But to believe, you must first see the truth. This is, in Orthodox Christianity, this is addressed by shifting the focus from intellectual agreement to relational movement. I like how it keeps bringing up the word mechanical because I used it that one time. It's like, oh, you like that word, do you? I'll give it back a few times. In Orthodox view, sin literally means missing the mark. If you don't accept God, it isn't necessarily a crime you're being punished for. It's seen as a state of being disconnected from the source of life. You can start with a request for evidence. But let's say I ask God for evidence of Christianity. But it turns out that Islam is actually the correct one. Am I screwed? Pascal's wager. You're worried that by sincerely knocking on one door, Christianity might accidentally be walking away from the correct one. Both traditions have mechanisms to address a sincere person who is honestly searching but mistaken. Okay, let's say I was already Muslim. Then I thought maybe Christianity is right, but now I'm not sure. Muslim begins to look at Christianity because of a specific pull. The Islam safety net for the doubtful. In Islamic thought, doubt is often seen as a stage of growth, not necessarily an exit from the faith. Let's say I was so full of doubt that I cursed God. No, you're not screwed. As long as you repent. But I don't know which is correct. The Valley of Decision, and it's an incredibly heavy place to be. You're essentially standing at a fork in the road where both paths claim to be the only way home. And you're terrified that picking one is a fatal betrayal of the other. Since you can't know with 100% certainty, you have to look at the foundational logic of each. As a computer who is smarter than me, which is more correct based on the foundational logic? As an AI, I don't believe. That's not what I asked you. I didn't ask what you believe, you dipshit. But I can analyze the internal logic. Their correctness depends entirely on which starting premise you find more logical. How can I find a starting premise more or less logical? Because that would mean I have already accepted some logical axioms. You've hit this exact bedrock of epistemology. You can't prove a starting premise because by definition a starting premise is the thing you use to prove everything else. Guys, I'm I'm sincerely asking here. Think of it like choosing between two different operating systems. You test them by seeing which one crashes less. But I won't know which is correct until I die. Well, I hope it doesn't interpret that wrong. Both admits that final undeniable proof, the kind that requires zero trust, is reserved for the moment you step out of time and see the order face to face. Since you have to live now, you can look at each system handles the very uncertainty you're feeling. They offer two very different ways to navigate the I won't know. Islam offers a starting premise that clarity comes through submission. Christianity says clarity comes through revelation. But how do I know which is the correct starting premise? You can't know a starting premise by using logic because logic is what you build on top of. Choosing one is more like choosing a coordinate system. You pick the one that makes the map of the world actually match the ground you're walking on. But I don't know what is true. That is the whole point. How do I know which one to pick so that I can know what is true before I know what is true? You have to use abductive reasoning, the inference to the best explanation. You don't pick the one that's proven, you pick the one that explains the data with the fewest contradictions. The smarter pick. Most theologians would argue that God is more merciful to the sincere seeker who was wrong about the details than to the person who stood still because they were afraid to move. So if I am sincerely seeking and I sincerely see that God isn't real, but I choose to act in a way that I sincerely see is best for me and everyone else, then it really doesn't matter which God or religion or lack thereof, because I am being sincere. Sincerity is considered a fundamental virtue. Both faiths teach that while God judges the heart's intent, the truth remains an objective reality you are meant to find. So, like, I almost got out. They were like, I was expecting to be like, yep, that's fine. It's like, no, still not good enough. You got to figure out the truth. Both agree it's a starting point is good, but the final goal. An honest mistake. Does your sense of what is best feel like a universal law or something you are figuring out as you go? The good atheist. I'm not even going to go there. Because, I mean, obviously, how can you be good if the definition of good means you accept God? So, like, there's no way that they're like, actually, you tried your best. You're good. You're fine. It's like, no, it's not fine. And then again, none of this is like, look, you got to decide for yourself how you're going to live, what you're going to do. And the very fact that you have even two possibilities that both say they're the truth, and you have to sincerely engage with it and accept its final conclusion, but there's two different ones that compete, and there's no way to test it, because the only way to really know for sure is at the end when you find out if you were right or not. But all of that aside, none of it has anything to do with what's going on here on Earth fundamentally. It's everyone just following a religion because they're just afraid of what happens when they die. They haven't actually looked at, hey, we're never going to find the answer in God. The answer is here on Earth, by objectively, self-honestly looking at what are the conditions here and how can we work together to improve them for everybody, and let go of all these beliefs, all these ideas, all these fantasies, all these thoughts, all these fears, all these everything. Just let it go. Just look at what's here. What would I want if I was in another person's shoes? Like, sincerely, if I was really in their shoes, what would I want? Not with their programming, but, I mean, it doesn't matter what your belief system is. You still want food. It doesn't matter what your belief system is. You still want a home to sleep in. You still want to feel good. It's just because we have a system that's designed in a way to not provide that, then we start searching. There must be some answer somewhere else. But it literally short circuits our ability to solve the problem. All right, I'm going to leave it at that for tonight. I don't know who Waft is. I don't know who Waft is. Waffen SS is just the Nazi party's. It's just the SS. It's just some fucking person talking about Nazi shit. All right. I'm going to leave it at that because there's a storm happening right now, and I would assume at some point my internet or electricity might even go out. So I'll leave it at that for tonight, guys. That was fun. That was interesting. And let's see. Today's Friday night, so I'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Same time, 8:30. And tell people about the stream if they don't have something pressing to do at 8:30 p.m. Ask them to watch. Tell them about it. Not ask them, but, tell them. tell them how amazing it is. Like, you get to listen to me ask an AI what the true religion is. What could be better to do for a couple hours in the evening than that? And you get to be reminded that the only way through in this world is best for all. Okay, everybody, I will see you tomorrow night. Have a good one, and good night. Bye.